guys, what's going on? Welcome back to Side Hustle Enterprise. I'm your favorite host, John Maz. Now, today's video, we're going to be going over a popular topic in regards to a lot of these used L3 miners, the L3++ and the L3 Plus from Bitmain. A lot of them are coming used from China, saying that they are refurbished, or you're buying them through Alibaba, or you're buying them from off of Craigslist or Facebook or whatever. A lot of times people are wanting to reflash to a updated firmware to get more out of their miners. Of course, why wouldn't you want to do that? That's of course the whole premise of mining, is getting the most out of this piece of equipment as you possibly can. Now, today's video, I'm going to be going over how to remove the control board. We're going to be going over how to flash the control board for, say, a signature error. And then at the end, I'm going to be showing you guys a trick that I figured out in regards to removing, say, a virus or a memory issue that the control boards from China are having, where it's not allowing you to flash from a flash drive. But before I do that, guys, of course, I have to ask you to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, join the conversation. If anything that I go over today, just doesn't sit right with you, or you have questions, or you want more details about what we talked about today, make sure you slide on over to Discord, join the conversation over there. There's a very large community of people that are growing and coming together and helping each other out. So make sure you guys check that out as well. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. I'm going to give you guys the rundown of what you kind of need for this setup. Of course, we're going to need at least 2 micro SD flash drives. 16 gigabit are the ones that I have, and you're going to need to have a USB micro SD device or dongle so you can flash your SD cards using, say, Balena Etcher. But I'll go over all that. And don't forget, all my links for everything we talk about today will be in the description down below. We're going to go over how to remove the control board. I'm going to go over how to jump the memory, a trick that I learned. So make sure you guys stay to the end, watch all the details of the video, and then ask your questions towards the end if you have any, or join the Discord like I had said. So let's take a look at our L3, see what we got going on. Okay, so before we take a look at the L3, I guess you guys should well know what they look like, so I'm going to hold off on that. Some of the things that you're going to need to download or look at is going to be first Balena Etcher. Just Google Balena Etcher. Again, I'll put a link in the description down below if you don't feel like Googling it. You're going to need this to flash files to your micro SD card. You're also going to need to check out, let's see here, Bitmain's support page. We're going to need to download either the L3 Plus or the L3++ NAND file if you are trying to bypass, say, a virus on your control board. And then we're also going to need another flash drive to download and save the HiveOS firmware. You don't have to use HiveOS firmware. HiveOS does have antivirus built into it. That's why I recommend using it moving forward, especially if you have already had a virus on your control board. You can also find additional firmwares from MSK Miner. They have a number of firmwares available for a number of different models and miners, not just Bitmain. And MSK Miner actually develops and works with HiveOS to create their firmware. So as I scroll down through the page here, you can see HiveOS pops right up in some of these firmwares. So you're going to need these to be flashable to your micro SD card. To make sure that your micro SD card is ready for flashing using Balena Etcher, we want to first pull up our micro SD card and format it to FAT32. Just a quick format is fine. Again, make sure you have FAT32 selected. Quick format and start. Shouldn't take all that long to flash. Again, my micro SD cards are 16 gigabytes. 8 works as well. I do like the 16 gigabytes because it just seems to work better that way for me. Try, experiment on your own. Let me know what you find to work for you guys. And then, of course, after we have all those firmwares downloaded and our micro SDs are flashed, we're going to need to download Balena Etcher. Now, it's real simple. It's balenaetcher.io/etcher. And just select your operating system and go ahead and download it. It's a real simple program to use. Once it downloads, you're going to select your files that you've downloaded. We're going to first select the NAND file, and we're going to flash that to our micro SD card. I went ahead and labeled one of my micro SD cards with the letter N, just so I know that that is the NAND file. Now, you can skip this step if you're just trying to flash your L3 because of a signature error, or you're just trying to flash your your L3 and you don't have a virus. The NAND file is going to help reboot your control board to factory settings and to eliminate and erase the virus that is on or encoded into the control board's memory. So that's why we're going through this step. Again, you can go ahead and skip it if you're not worried about a virus. So we're going to head and flash from file, select our file, and then we're going to go ahead and save it to our target area, which is going to be our micro SD card. And then just hit flash. I'm not going to go ahead and do the process. It is pretty self-explanatory and straightforward. Just make sure that you label your micro SDs after you flash your firmwares on there. We're also going to need to flash another micro SD card with the HiveOS firmware of your choice for the second half of the booting process. Again, if you are not worried about a virus and you're just trying to flash a new firmware and get past the signature page, all you have to do is download the HiveOS firmware and go from there. All right, so let's now take a look at our L3 Plus. It's a little beat up. We just got it in today. So there's our L3 Plus. It's a little banged up. Sorry about the picture quality. I don't have another 1080p camera to use, but this is our L3 Plus. We have a power supply. We have an extra control board. And of course, we have our tools of the trade here, which are going to be our two flash drives, our two micro SD cards, our flash drives, and a pair of tweezers. All right. So first things we're going to want to do, reposition the L3 so we can see it. Prop it up here on the power supply. Maybe. Okay, so we don't have to worry about the ribbon cables in the back. We just want the control board in the front. So we're going to disconnect all of our fans. Just wiggle it a little bit back and forth. It should pop right out. Depending on how long they were serviced, if they were even serviced at all, it does get a little tricky to kind of pop these things out. I'm going to pop all our ribbon cables out. Okay, everything is out of the way. Now be careful with these. They're not the best quality metal. They're just some little tin pieces of sheet metal. You pull on these too hard and they will bend and your control board will not lock back in when you're done with this process. So we're just going to gently pull back on these metal clips, just enough to squeeze the control board past it. All right, not bending them out of the way. We still want to retain that spring to those clips. The control board slides right out. And then our L3 can go bye-bye for now. Okay, so we have our control board that we pulled out of the L3, and I do have a spare control board just in case. I do have spare control boards available. If anybody's looking for them, please reach out to me, let me know, and we'll get you hooked up and set up with one. We are using the Bitmain power supply. They don't have on-off switches to them, so if you have, say, a surge protector with an on-off switch, that may be a little bit more convenient for you, help you out. What I'm going to do today is just unplug between each flashing process, just to kind of speed up the process here instead of me digging around my house for, say, a surge protector or a power supply with an on-off switch. All we do need is one plug. We're not using anything else because we're not obviously going to the hash boards. We're just going to the control board. We got our L3 control board in front of us. It doesn't look too bad. It's fairly clean, but we are going to assume that it does have a virus on it. So what we're going to need to do is grab our SD card with the NAND file that we flashed earlier. We're going to insert it into the SD slot on the back of our L3 control board. We're going to make sure that our SD card is facing upside down and backwards. That's just how the SD slots are installed on the control boards. So we're going to head and insert it. Make sure that as you push it in, you listen for that click. It's a very small little click. It just indicates that the SD card is completely seated into the SD slot. And we're going to go ahead and plug in our power to the control board without powering up the power supply. Make sure you do that first. Plug the power in. Do not turn on your power supply just yet. Once we have everything plugged in, we're ready to go. We are going to jump using a pair of tweezers. Now there is a number of different ways of doing this. I've seen people go into the actual coding and remove the virus via code in the memory. I've seen people solder different points on the control board to short out the memory. We're going to do something similar by shorting out the memory using just a pair of tweezers. These are small pins. Mistakes can be made if you're not comfortable with a soldering iron, if you're not comfortable doing that kind of setup. This is an alternative solution. It's worked very well for me. It's worked well on a number of different applications for L3s, whether it be the SD reboot virus or the pool virus that keeps rebooting your L3 to a locked pool. It works with a number of different viruses. So we're going to go ahead and set our tweezers on the third pin down closest to the SD slot. So we have two rows of pins here. We're going to be looking at the row of pins closest to the SD card. Let's see if I can get a little closer there for you. So again, row on the inside, third one down from the top, and we're going to grab that one with our tweezers and jump it to this grounding hole here at the top. It is a little tricky to do. I am using a pair of angled tweezers. A flathead set of tweezers may work a little bit better. I just kind of have these tied off so I can get a nice clean grip on that pin and that grounding hole. What we're doing is essentially shorting out the memory and bypassing that code to allow our control board to boot from our SD card. It's the same concept when you solder a jumper wire from your second pin over here to the second pin down over here. Or again, we're just jumping or grounding out the memory in an effort to short it out, allowing the control board a chance to boot from our flashed NAND SD card. And again, I went ahead and labeled my SD cards N, so I know which one has the NAND file on it. Let's go ahead and connect our power. I do apologize, the fan from the Bitmain power supply will kick in. I do apologize if it is a little too loud. I'll do my best to kind of keep it away from the microphone. And again, I'm going to carefully grab that third pin, stretch my tweezers over to that grounding hole, and kind of hold them there. It is a little bit precarious, but in my opinion, it's a lot easier than trying to solder and potentially damaging your control board with heat. Okay, so now that we're situated and I kind of got it locked in here, let me see if I can move my arm so you guys can see the lights right underneath my wrist there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in the power. Let's see if I get a better angle. Okay, so we got the pins jumped. We're going to plug in the power. We're going to wait for these lights to turn on. We are going to count to 7, 5, 7, 10, pick a number. Don't go past 10 seconds because then it's just going to start to reboot on its own again. So we're going to count to say 7, and we're going to remove our tweezers. The lights will then go off. We're going to continue to wait 15 to 30 seconds for the memory to be bypassed and for the control board to boot from the NAND file. Once it is completed and booted from the NAND file, we will see our indicator lights start to blink. So let's go ahead and run through that process. Okay, there's our lights. Count to 7. Pull our tweezers. And this process does take, like I said, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, depending on your control board and how much cache it has stored in it. And there's a lot of different factors to indicate how fast this will actually flash for you. So lights have gone off. It will now recycle and boot from your SD card, bypassing your memory. So now we're just going to wait for these indicator lights to start flashing, letting us know that the flash has been completed. Okay, so there's the first solid state. We're just going to wait for them to start flashing before we remove our power supply. There they go. So now your flash is complete. You have successfully removed the virus from the control board. Now it is ready to accept, say, HiveOS or ASIC FW firmware, which we already have saved on a separate flash drive. So once our PSU turns off and we know the capacitors in it are empty, I'm going to go ahead and pull this SD card and insert the HiveOS one. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and pop out the NAND file SD card. We're going to insert the SD card with the HiveOS firmware. And again, I like HiveOS because it has an antivirus built in, and because it makes utilizing our farm that much easier. We can control different aspects of our miners across, thousands of miles, which is nice. I don't have to be at the farm 24/7, 7 days a week. I can control it remotely if I want to. So again, I'm going to make sure that SD card is properly seated. Now, we don't have to jump it on this stage. We can just leave it as it is and power it up. Because we removed that virus using that NAND file from Bitmain, all we have to do is wait for the proper cycle period for the new firmware to be installed on our control board. If the virus was still present, we would see a slight jump in color from the blue internal light to the red light here. But we're not seeing any of that, so it means that it seems to be proceeding as it should, and all we have to do now is wait for the flash to be completed, and we'll know that when the indicator lights start to blink for us. Alright, there they are. So it's tough to see, but both the green and the red light are on. We're going to let them remain solid here for a second, making sure that everything has been completed and flashed appropriately. And now, because of the coding in HiveOS, the fault light will blink alone, letting us know that the flash has been successful. So we can go ahead and power everything off. Again, just for my mental state, I guess you could say, I am going to wait for the fans to turn off in the PSU before I unplug it from the control board. Okay. So the fans have turned off. We're going to go ahead and unplug our control board from the PSU. Don't forget to remove your flash drive with the HiveOS firmware. And then we can go ahead and reinstall this. Sorry about that. We can go ahead and reinstall this back into our L3 and proceed as instructions dictate if you're doing HiveOS or ASIC FW, connecting to our flight sheets or our pools, and start overclocking and tuning our L3s to get the most out of them as possible. Now, a similar process is needed to remove, say, a signature error that you have on your control boards if you're trying to just jump from the stock Bitmain firmware to, say, HiveOS. You will need the HiveOS installed on a flash drive. Just HiveOS. We're going to skip the NAND file because we don't have a virus. We're going to assume that this is a clean control board. We're going to insert our HiveOS SD card into the back of our SD slot. Again, make sure it's completely seated, and power cycle it up again. Wait for all the indicator lights as I dictated just a few seconds ago, and get the HiveOS firmware up and running. By doing it this way and flashing it with your micro SD card, you are going to eliminate that signature error that you may pop up while flashing into, say, HiveOS or ASIC FW. Again, we need the NAND file to erase the coding that has been installed by the virus. And the NAND file we got from the Bitmain support page. So make sure that you guys have that all written down. Again, I'll put all the descriptions for all these links down below. And if you need help with them, we are working on a wiki page over on the Discord server. And there's tons of people over there that are willing to help you guys. Again, reach out to me, reach out to them. We'll get you set up. We'll get you help. Worst case scenario, you fry your control board by trying to solder different connectors across your control board, and you short it out. I like using the tweezer method because I don't run the risk of soldering to the wrong pin or burning through my control board. It just made things a lot easier for me. I hope this method helps you guys get rid of those pesky viruses and you guys get set up with a proper firmware, whether you go back to Bitmain's firmware or you use firmware like HiveOS, which has antivirus built into it. If you are running a farm and you bring in a machine that potentially has a virus, it can infect your entire farm if you're not running firmware with a antivirus program built into it. So just keep that in mind. We flash all of our L3s that we purchase, whether we're buying them refurbished from a vetted distributor or we get them, from China and they come dusty, dingy, or we find them on the side of the road. It doesn't matter. We always flash our control boards, removing any viruses, removing any of the old firmware and settings, and installing the HiveOS firmware that has the antivirus on it. Hope this helps, guys. If you have any questions, I can't stress enough, reach out, join the conversation, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button for the next video. I will do my best to go live every Wednesday. As we progress through the holidays and into the new year, things do kind of vary in scheduling, but just stay tuned and look for those notifications by hitting that notification bell. So until next time, guys, appreciate you, and we'll talk soon.